Okay, I think we are live.
Awesome.
Let's see, we're in there. Say hello if you see us out there. Yes.
Nice.
We're here, ready to chat about.
All right.
All right.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dominique, and I'm joined today with Maria Rieger, our resident astrologer mom. And we're here to talk about Mercury today. Mercury is the planet of communication and learning, so what better to do today? Like Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better. So let's learn together. Just a few things first that I want to share my sort of feelings about why Mercury is so beneficial to understand in our charts and in our kids' charts. I mean, obviously the sun, moon, and rising are so important, but Mercury is kind of like a big significant element in terms of everything, because it's how we communicate, which is how we relate, how we're in relationship together, which is everything, right? So understanding how our kids talk and think and communicate and listen and how they do it differently from us can make such a difference in how we parent, right? I know my son is a Pisces Mercury and I have it in Aquarius. So I knew right away that his emotional Mercury was not going to be as logical as mine, and I was going to have to make adjustments for that for sure. So understanding the Mercury is so important. And then also it can help us when you have more than one child, because I don't, but I know it's important with like classmates and friends to help them sort of communicate when they have disagreements and stuff, to understand how your child thinks and operates and communicates. And then of course, school, definitely with helping them understand their learning style, knowing their learning style. I think we can do a whole talk on learning styles, right? And Mercury.
Yeah, for sure.
But today we're going to focus on Mercury and Mercury retrograde in the chart, because we are in the shadow of a Mercury retrograde. And we're going to go through those things, talk specifically about the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. And then if we have time, some chat about some chart examples, and hopefully you have some questions. So if you do, definitely put them in the chat over here and I'll check that out throughout. But so hopefully we can give you some cool tips and strategies for utilizing Mercury's, the inside of Mercury retrograde in your chart, and also like the cycles and the transits, and particularly the one we're in now. So I'm going to let Maria take the floor, introduce herself, and tell us about her and her work, and then get us going with the overview of Mercury and Mercury retrograde in the chart.
Awesome. Thanks, Dominique. We're going to talk a little bit about the significance of Mercury in the natal chart and the significance of Mercury retrograde in the natal chart when the chart holder is born under a Mercury retrograde. So first, like Dominique said, I'm Maria Rieger. I'm an attorney by day. I'm an author and astrologer by night. That may seem weird to you, but it's to a Gemini, that's just par for the course. We have a lot of unique and varied interests. I publish a positive parenting with astrology content on my YouTube channel and my blog, which is lawschoolheretic.com. And I've also written a couple of parenting books. Going to make a shameless plug real quick. I have a book on Scorpio children, which is available at all your retailers, including Amazon. And my book on Gemini children is currently available for pre-order at the limited time price of 99 cents on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And that will be published in the next couple of weeks. I'm a Gemini. My son is a Scorpio. So that's kind of what was the impetus for writing those books. Like Dominique, we have kind of a similar dynamic in my house with my son has a Mercury in Scorpio. I have the Mercury in Gemini. So definitely different styles of learning and communication and data retention and things like that. Okay, the significance of Mercury in the birth chart. Mercury is a fast-moving planet, one of the personal planets, which means it has a significant effect on the personality and characteristics of the chart holder. The slower-moving planets like Uranus, Pluto, people of the same generation will have the same sign placements because those planets move so quickly. But for the personal planets, including Mercury, that position, sign and house position is very particular to the chart holder. Mercury is never further than 28 degrees from the sun, so it's very common to have your Mercury in the same sign as the sun. But as Dominique mentioned, that's not always the case. So if you are having trouble figuring your child out, if your child is, I don't know, a Pisces sun, but you think that they may not behave or learn like you would think a Pisces would, look to the Mercury sign, like Dominique said, that may instruct you as far as how your child learns, how they communicate, how they absorb, evaluate, transmit data. Mercury is about communication and learning, also about taking in data, processing, evaluating data, and making mental connections. Mercury is very comfortable in an air sign like Gemini or Aquarius. Mercury rules Gemini, so obviously that's a comfortable placement. That may make the chart holder appear a little scattered or even mentally chaotic to other people sometimes, but Mercury is all about logic and detachment, kind of looking at things clinically. So Mercury being in an air sign is a very comfortable placement. Mercury being in a water sign, like the case with my son and Dominique's son, it's not as comfortable a placement because Mercury is all about logic and rationality, and water signs need to feel. Kind of their first line of reaction is to empathize and feel deeply. So it's really difficult for them to take the feeling out of that decision-making process. And Mercury does also inform how the chart holder makes decisions, because that involves taking in data, considering data, evaluating data, weighing pros and cons, and making decisions. So Mercury will also instruct that aspect. That's especially helpful for parents. Okay, quickly, the sign and house position. So the sign position of Mercury will tell you how the chart holder, for example, your child expresses the energy of Mercury particularly, and the house position that Mercury is in will represent the fields of experience that will be emphasized for that person. So in the case of Mercury, you would look to the house position. For example, somebody with a Mercury in the 4th house would have the need to communicate regarding topics of the home and family. That's the house associated with Cancer, right? Somebody with Mercury in the 7th house, the house of one-on-one relationships, for them it's essential that there's communication in the relationships. A lot of their communication thought processes will revolve around relationships. That'll inform you about the chart holder too. What does it mean when somebody has Mercury retrograde in the natal chart, when they were born under a Mercury retrograde? Well, when you're born under any retrograde planet, the energy of the planet tends to be directed inward, internally for the chart holder. So in the case of Mercury retrograde, that may mean that somebody tends to ruminate a little bit more, tends to overthink things even more than usual, that their decision-making, their thought processes, their consideration of data all occurs inside of the mind as opposed to talking it out with people. Sometimes Mercury retrograde, people who have that placement in the natal chart have a challenging time articulating things, especially their decision-making process and their thoughts and feelings about things. So if you're a parent of a child with that placement, it's important that you be extra patient with them and help them find the words. If they're having trouble articulating, you can say, well, it appears that you may feel like this. Is that right? Am I understanding this correctly? You're gonna have to be extra patient with them. Okay, what else? Oh, one last point on that. People who have Mercury retrograde in the natal chart, my experience is they generally tend to not appear to be quite as affected by the transit Mercury retrograde because it's kind of par for the course. I told Dominique, I always seem to be a mess during Mercury retrograde. Gemini people seem to be very affected. I don't have Mercury retrograde in my natal chart, but people that do tend to not be affected quite as much by the transit Mercury retrograde because it's always kind of been challenging for them, the communication delays and things like that. So did you have anything to add, Dominique, to any of that? And then we can go on.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. Anytime I've ever done a reading with someone who does have Mercury retrograde in the chart, and I've explained to them, oh, well, maybe that's, you feel this way where it's, Mercury retrograde, whatever, that's like old hat, or yes, I always have to rethink, or I always have to check twice. Right. Like, yeah, that's me. So it's always been validated anytime I've who has that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Okay. Just as a note, we'll probably talk about it in a different video, the significance of Mercury and all the signs and the houses. We don't have time to get into all that today because we want to really focus on this upcoming Mercury retrograde transit, which has a potential to be very significant. So Dominique's going to go over your tips for handling Mercury retrograde transit.
Yeah, so in general, Mercury retrograde, just to give you a little insight into the process, the cycle, we often can feel Mercury retrograde kind of coming on because it has a buildup. You'll hear that phrase, it's in its shadow. We've been saying that today. So once Mercury hits that degree in the direct motion that it's going to go retrograde, we're kind of in a little shadow. It's like the buildup too. Then everybody knows those few weeks when it is retrograde and it stations and it moves forward again. So it's a little longer cycle than just that retrograde period. So we feel the buildup. We're kind of feeling it already. I know I am. And afterwards, when it stations direct, it still takes a little time for Mercury to move back up. This is a fast-moving planet, but it takes a little while to kind of get its speed going. So you may be feeling some of this that we're going to talk about already, even though Mercury doesn't go retrograde till next week, till next Wednesday. But in general, Mercury retrograde, you can think of all those rewords: rework, reconsider, reevaluate, restore, reflect. All those are retrograde words. And with a retrograde Mercury, it's a good time to take out some extra moments to pause and breathe, because we're always fast moving. We're always go, 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 go. It's a really good time, I find, to go, okay, I've been moving really fast. Let me step back and think about, have I got everything in place? Have I missed anything before I make this big decision? It's typically not a good time to make decisions if you can wait. You know, some life happens and sometimes you have to make decisions. You do the best you can. And with Mercury retrograde, it could be a hiccup, like some contract you forgot to sign a page, right, of a contract. Or you placed an order and they misunderstood and got it wrong. It could be minor stuff like that. Or it can be something really big and you're like, oh, I'm never going to make that mistake again. You know, either way, you're learning, right? So if you're going to travel during a Mercury retrograde, it's always good to double check reservations and just expect delays. Get to the airport early, think about those kinds of things, and you'll, I think, alleviate and avoid potential headache, because it's going to happen. And retrogrades can be really frustrating because people typically are on the go. They want their information fast. They want things happening. And when it doesn't, we get irritated. So again, breathe through Mercury retrograde, and then also back up your tech, right? Get your car checked, all those kinds of things. It rules travel and tech. So that's why we did a test this morning, because we just, in the shadow, we wanted to make sure we were on track. So Mercury retrograde in Scorpio next week, October 14th, 13th, 14th, depending on where you are, and it goes direct November 3rd. Now in Scorpio, you have Mercury, this air sign, Gemini in Scorpio, a water sign. And not just any water sign, but a very sort of intuitive, intense, emotional water sign. So you can see this as manifesting as more dramatic talk, or more distrusting attitudes, or worrisome. And also Scorpio is about control. And so you may feel like all of a sudden you feel like you're trying to control conversations or control where things are going, or you feel sort of a lack of control and you're just like out of sorts mentally. So we all can be experiencing things like a mental fog, or intuitively not quite clear, confusion, or making mountains out of molehills. I've already found myself doing this a couple times this week. And I think it's because Scorpio is like life or death, right? So it feels like every decision we're making right now feels like life and death. I mean, I have Mercury in the 8th house. So I know from life that I constantly go, okay, this is not a life or death decision, even though it feels that way. So with Mercury and Scorpio squaring my Aquarius Mercury right now, I go, okay, let's just roll with it. It's not life or death, but it can feel that way. Right. And so we can have also harsh reactions or use words harshly. I know I've had to check myself a couple times, getting irritated and, wanting to lash out, and instead knowing that I'm probably not going to say the right thing here. Right? So, and also Scorpio is a fixed sign. So we might start to feel stuck in some ways, or like unable to move or make decisions. And I think we need to, at that point, surrender, right? And get into some self-care. So speaking of that, we'll get into now some tips about Mercury retrograde for us as parents, and then what we can do to help our kids as they're going through the same transit. We're all going through this. And that, I think, is the number one point to remember, is that we're all experiencing this retrograde, us and our kids, right? So self-care is number one, because I have found this to be the biggest thing is I have to check myself before I wreck myself or create a situation in my, relationship with anyone I'm dealing with, including my child, before it gets out of hand. And I'm noticing, the tears are coming a lot quicker, when there's a misunderstanding, and I have to step back. So I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me when we were talking about all these different tips was that self-care and taking that time to just sort of go, okay, let me step back. But kids in general, I think during this time, if you, Maria, they're going to be out of sorts. I mean, just feeling sort of not themselves. And I think, speak to what you were saying about the difference between like younger kids and older kids in terms of how they'll experience it.
Right.
Like younger kids, you said would be a little like, can be more fussy.
A little fussier. Yeah. Just in general, have trouble going to sleep. Right. And the older kids, they may have trouble articulating what they're feeling too, because they don't understand that necessarily this is, energy transits that are temporary. They may be more defiant. And in fact, I talked to a couple friends yesterday who said, my kid's acting more sassy than normal. And I said, yep, I know why. So my tip for if your kid's being a little extra defiant, instead of, being harsher or stricter with them, relax the rules a little bit. And like Dominique said, take a deep breath and ask them, hey, what's going on with you? And focus on creating positive connections with them. Tell them, you know what? It seems like you may need a break. Let's sit down and watch your favorite program together. Or let's order out tonight and let's just eat at the table and play a card game. Let's do something fun. Like focus on the connection. Don't focus on, you're not a bad parent if your kid's being a little defiant or not listening to you. That's what kids do. I mean, especially kids like, our son's age, where ages where they're really starting to kind of exert their independence and autonomy more. That's a totally normal development, and you want them to do that, right? They're growing up, and eventually they're going to be independent. So that's them wanting more independence at home is a good thing, and where you can give them the age-appropriate independence, give them to say what they eat for dinner, let them help you, prepare dinner and other things. And that boosts self-confidence. I notice that my kid's attitude gets a lot better when I let him do more stuff at home, like cooking or decide what he eats or deciding his own schedule. So sometimes I see with parents, sometimes there's a tendency when kids are being extra defiant to kind of put the thumb screws in and be like, well, you're grounded. But take a step back and ask, try to talk to them and find out what's going on. And most importantly, maintain the positive connections with them, because that's the primordial thing right now.
And also, like you said, if they're not able to even articulate what they need,
right,
or what they're feeling, I just want you to sit here with me. I don't know, just can you watch me do this, or just sure, And the thing is, we may feel irritated because we have something else we need to do or want to do, and you're like, let me sit here with you for a few minutes. So I think also making that conscious decision to go, okay, I know we're all kind of feeling stressed, and he probably doesn't even realize what he's feeling. So let me just be the adult here, take a break, and be with them. Just be present.
Right, exactly.
Susan had asked how long the retrograde lasts, and it's actually till November 3rd is when it goes direct.
Mm-hmm. So will we be feeling the effects of it a little bit past November 3rd?
Yes, I believe so. I think even till Mars actually goes direct, I think the 13th of November. So I think we're still kind of in that too. So I think for another week or so, and usually like technically it's till it reaches the degree to which it went retrograde again, which I believe is 11 or something. So yeah, definitely a few days after. And Mercury needs to build up speed. And sometimes Mercury retrograde can be most intense on those days where it's like stuck, where it's not moving at all.
You may feel like you're just not able to accomplish what you would usually accomplish, and that's normal for that period. So take it easy on yourself. Yeah. Exactly.
And you were talking about observing the behavior from a detached place.
Right.
I thought that was really important too. Can you go into that sort of detachment thing too?
Right. So observe, don't absorb. Right. I actually got that from a psychologist that I watch on YouTube about kind of getting over childhood trauma. He's like, observe, don't absorb, because it's so easy for us parents to get, mired in the day-to-day, I call it the day-to-day quagmire of like all the stuff you have to do and get your kids to school. And if you're doing home, distance learning like you guys are, getting and working on top of that, all this stuff. And it's easy to get mired down in that and kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. Like, how is everybody doing? Is everybody happy? Is everybody, fulfilled right now? So this is a good time to do that, to kind of step back from that, and really look to see, work on the relationship. I don't know if we're going to go into a little bit later on, like Mercury, like the particulars of this particular retrograde. Do you want to go over that now, or?
Sure.
Okay. Get my kids up here. Oh yeah. So, right. So this upcoming Mercury retrograde transit is going to be in Scorpio for almost the whole time. And so look at, one thing we would recommend is look at, your chart, your children's chart, what house Mercury is going to be retrograding in your charts. The themes of that house will be especially significant, right? So last year there was a Mercury retrograding. It was either my fifth house or my son's fifth house, and there were some school issues that came up, right? And that's the house. That's the house that rules children, right? So there's some school and educational day-to-day issues that came up. So that's an example of that. So for more particulars on how the retrograde will be affecting you and your kids, look at the house it'll be retrograding, to consider kind of what areas are going to be emphasized for you in that transit. So as we talked about, Mercury represents logic, intelligence, detachment, communication, and Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto, represents the subconscious, very deep feelings, profound, hidden feelings. Scorpios tend to be very secretive, especially Scorpio moon people tend to be very secretive about feelings and their innermost thoughts. It's hard to get to know them sometimes. And Scorpios a lot of the time even like to be misunderstood. I've come across that. It's almost like they don't want to be understood. Some of them, not all of them. So because this Mercury retrograde is going to be transiting in the sign of Scorpio, it's kind of going to be combining the characteristics of Mercury, the logic, the detachment, the communication, with the characteristics, those profound subconscious characteristics of Scorpio. So it really has the potential for us to kind of bring to the surface and articulate a lot of those subconscious thought processes and things that we're going through, and consider whether we need to make changes in our lives to better fulfill our soul needs, our family's soul needs, our children's soul needs. And that often, when Scorpio is involved, or Pluto, that often involves letting go of things, either letting go of things, obligations, people, relationships, friendships that no longer serve us, that no longer have value to us, that no longer fulfill our soul needs. And that's a difficult process sometimes, but it's necessary for growth. But the good thing is, Dominique mentioned that detachment, the Mercury energy will give us the potential to look at those things from a very detached, more clinical point of view, because when we're feeling deeply, it's very hard to detach ourselves and look at things objectively. But the Mercury energy will help us do that a lot better. So it has the potential to be a very powerful transit. What else was I going to say? Oh, and we wanted to mention in reviewing some materials by Robert Hand, a very well-known astrologer, everybody knows, he said, and I'm the first to admit that I've been guilty of this through my life, Mercury dominant people and Gemini people have the tendency to move on to new experiences because they're so fast-paced in everything they do. They have the tendency to move on to new experiences before considering and processing and learning the lessons from old experiences. And that may give them the tendency to repeat the same mistakes and kind of not exhibit that, growth in order to be fulfilled, to lead a fulfilling life. So that's something that I've thought about a lot in my life, moving on too quickly before taking the lessons from old experiences. And this retrograde, because the retrograde makes the energy of Mercury makes us focus that energy more inwardly, internally. This transit has the potential to make us slow down and consider those old former experiences and the lessons that we can take forward from them so we don't repeat the same mistakes. And in terms of parenting, it's a good time to detach and think about what we've done in the past that may or may not serve us and improve our parenting, our relationship with our kids. So that's something to consider as we kind of go through this transit. That process is not comfortable. I know from personal experience, but as Carl Jung said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. So there's always some discomfort involved with growth. It's definitely going to lead us to a better place. This is a great time. This transit is a great time to undertake any self-help related endeavors, whether it's reading self-help books, parenting books, courses, any YouTube helpful videos, seeking therapy, talking with friends who can be objective, talking things out. This is a great time to undertake all that stuff. You don't have to make any final decisions right now. Just think about things. The decisions can come later after the retrograde period ends, but this is a great time to consider these things and gather as much information as you can, okay? So we wanted to also mention that, interestingly, Pluto, which is Scorpio's ruling planet, just ended a months-long retrograde period and is now direct. So this is a natural progression of things. Everything that kind of that Pluto retrograde transit made you consider, even though maybe it was uncomfortable, you're going to take the lessons that you learned, the things you thought about during that retrograde transit, and now take them forward as Pluto goes direct to this upcoming transit. And now you can look at those lessons with detachment, observe, don't absorb, right? With detachment and with a little bit less emotional reaction, and now kind of slowly begin to make the decisions about what changes you need to make in your life moving forward, right? So
it's about transformation and death and rebirth. And since it's been retrograde and like we've been all in these sort of like holding patterns and figuring out what is really
right.
out, what really isn't working. And now bringing to this, now that it's direct and this retrograde is bringing to the surface some of those realities. Okay, now that we know those realities, what decisions do we make based on it? I mean, a lot of people who are being forced to homeschool, if you will, now are realizing, hey, maybe my child does better at this, you know, or maybe I need to be more involved in this, you know, because it's hard for them. Or so there's a lot of what's not working, what's dying, but what actually, okay, well, wasn't working, and now we can create a new system for doing this in a better way. So maybe doing that reflecting and that research is also a good time to think about and research what options you have so you can make those decisions for building better systems, you know, for balance in our families and our home life, because so much has changed this year for so many of us and so much pressure on us as parents, you know.
Right.
So I'm definitely feeling that. And it's easy to lash out when you're frustrated and things aren't going well, and especially on our children, instead of going, wow, like I'm just really affected by what's happened this year, and I need to figure out how to move forward and create an environment that's good for my family and me, you know, based on this. So
Absolutely.
Definitely good stuff. I love the Robert Hand thing. Let me see over here if there's any other questions. Do you want to, how much time have we got? Oh, about a half hour. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I know we like shared a lot of information really fast.
Yeah, I know.
There's some questions, but do you want me to share host and look at an actual chart and maybe kind of go into that?
Yeah, definitely.
Also inspire some questions. And if I think of any questions or you think of any other things, we can definitely do that. So I'm going to give you the host, make you host so you can go to with a chart. And I'll keep an eye out over here and see if people ask questions.
I'm, let's see here. Oh, I gotta share. I'm kind of new to Zoom still, so. All right, here we go. Let's see.
Yeah, so maybe share one of those charts where Mercury is, and
here we go. Okay, yeah. So can you see that? Okay, Dominique.
Yes, I can.
Let's see. It came up okay. All right. So okay. So this person, if you can see. Oh wait, I don't have the retrograde here. Okay, let me go to another one. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this person, you can see Mercury there on the right is going to be retrograding in this person's 7th house, may make it to the 8th.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, may make it to the 8th house. but largely going to be, see retrograde in this person's 7th house. So as we said earlier, 7th house being the house of one-to-one relationships, that usually has to do with your partner. If you're a child, that may have to do with a parent, right? One or both parents. So I would expect a lot of relationship-oriented issues to come up, and that person to have to think carefully about relationships that are serving them, that are going, what's going well, what's not going well, what could be better. Could also pertain to business partnerships in the case of an adult, what's working out, what's not, things like that.
It's going to be retrograde in my son's 7th house. So does
right.
that mean it will be about me?
Very well could be. Yeah, very well could be. Him, his father, both of you could very well be. I mean, it doesn't always mean things are going to be bad. It just means that maybe there's a little, maybe he's going to need a little extra attention from you, you know? I
feel that already. And that's why, since it's squaring in the 5th, for me,
yeah.
I already sense that he does need that, or that he is more sensitive. And I've got to check myself because I'm feeling the pressure. So it's important I check that and take a deep breath so that I can be there for him in a really positive way and not in a reactionary way.
Right, exactly. And to your point you made earlier about spending more time with our kids, I did read in a parenting expert, in a book that a parenting expert wrote, that she said that kids will rarely, even older kids will rarely tell the parents, hey, I'm having a hard time, like I need some attention from you, right? It'll come out as, will you watch TV with me? Or will you sit with me? Or will you help me with this? Or will you play a game with me? That's their way of telling you that they need time with you for whatever reason. Either they had a bad day, they're having a hard time, that they need time with you. So it's easy for us, as you mentioned earlier, Dominique, it's easy for parents to be like, no, I have all these things to do. But my strong recommendation is, to the extent that you can, leave the tasks and the chores that you have to do and, focus more on spending time with your kids. And to the point Dominique was making earlier about self-care, that means order takeout a bit more or leave the dishes for a while. That's fine. Like, focus on
making sure to get in my morning meditation too. I've been
right. I was bad today. I did not get my morning meditation in, but I need to do that.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And sometimes even when I do it, I'll be in meditation and I'm like clenching and I go.
I know, but you still, it's still helpful even though you feel like you can't fully relax. Yeah.
For sure.
So I can also share another one here real quick.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna get that up real quick before I share again.
Any other questions? Definitely let us know.
Yeah, please. If you have questions, now's the time. Definitely.
All right. Well, Susan King said that was great advice. So.
Okay. Good.
Yay.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, look, we are not machines, right?
Right.
We run out of steam. Parents run out of steam too. Willpower is an exhaustible resource. My kid, he's a Scorp. He can be relentless about pursuing what he wants. And I'm like, I just told you no. I said no, but he has a Gemini moon, so he loves to negotiate. What about this? What about this? And I feel worn down a lot of the time, right? And I have to, like Dominique said, check myself before I say something that I'm going to regret later. I don't want to do that because he's a Scorp, he's very sensitive, and the words have a profound effect on him. And I always think about that. And there were several times the past few weeks I've had to really check myself about not saying something I knew I was going to regret later.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. One more.
Do you have anything with Mercury retrograde in a different house, or?
I do. I'm bringing that up right now. All right, here we are. All right. Let me bring this up. Okay. Let me share. Oh, here we go. Share desktop. Okay. Oop. I think that's shared. Okay. Maybe not. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So here we go. So this transit, Mercury retrograde, is going to be retrograding the 1st house, may make it to the 2nd. So the 1st house, the house associated with Aries, house of self. So that's going to be an interesting one. So maybe this person has to think about the direction his or her life is taking, or kind of what she wants to do, he or she wants to do with their life as far as kind of life goals or objectives. What kind of person, it could be a variety of things, but that's probably going to be pretty significant.
And could it be in a child's chart in the first as like a much more intense, I need what I want, or
right,
or
yeah,
aggressiveness towards getting what they want.
Right, absolutely. You could see some, especially with it transiting Scorpio, a relentless pursuit of what they want. That could lead to more defiance than normal, more attitude than normal in older children. That's all normal. Again, the key is be extra patient. Don't emotionally overreact. It's going to be hard, especially with all the Scorpio energy, but that's the key, is listen. Oftentimes I find that when you let kids have their say and they feel that they've been able to assert their autonomy, then they're way more willing to listen to the parents, if the parents kind of let them have their say. So one of my kind of triggers is when parents tell me, oh, I don't let my kid talk back. Well, some people say talk back, I say self-champion. It also depends. Obviously, kids should always be civil and respectful to you. I'm not saying otherwise. But as far as talking back, like, I let my kid talk to me. He can say anything he wants to me as long as he's civil and respectful. He can say no. He can say, I don't want to do that, as long as he's civil. So that's important, because your kids aren't going to have the same preferences as you. It's just a fact. So letting them have their say, and just listening to them calmly. And sometimes if you don't know what to say, just say nothing, or just nod and say, like, I hear you. Sometimes that leads them to kind of calm down, especially with older kids, and be more willing to listen to what the parents have to say and do what the parents want them to do. So try that, see how it works.
And I wonder about like timeouts. Like I tend to like, okay, let's just take a break and take timeouts, but
absolutely,
also a risk of like them feeling rejected. Like sometimes when I feel like I need a timeout, Joe will think maybe I'm like rejecting him, or I don't want to talk to him. And really, I'm just trying to give us both a break. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's totally, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't agree with making timeout kind of a punitive thing. The take a break idea, let's take a break. Yeah. We need a break. Just, we're going to rest, right? We're not robots. We need to rest. And it's totally fine for parents to say, hey, I just need a few minutes. I have to tell my son that. And I do feel a lot of guilt about not spending all my free time with him. And that's my problem, obviously. So, but it is totally acceptable for you to say to your kids, I mean, in my mind, it's totally acceptable for you to say to your kids, hey, I need half an hour quiet. I'm just going to go read, or I'm just going to sit outside, and then I'll come play with you.
Child thing too, right?
What's that?
An only child thing? Do you ever just
Yeah, because we have only children, you and I. So yeah, that's definitely like the parent tends to be the kid's playmate. So that's hard. But as long as you're taking time every day to connect with your kids, even if it's, a parenting expert told me about at least 30 minutes a day to connect with your kid. And by that, I mean, just sit with them, just focus all your attention on them in a pressure-free way, right? Just hang out to connect with them and give them the chance to talk to you about anything they may need to talk about. That's sufficient. So, definitely just make some time. And if you have multiple kids, I mean, more power to you. That's hard to do, obviously, because sometimes you may have kids that have just more intense needs at the moment than the other kids. And you're going to have to, I've talked to parents who are, need to make the decision, who needs me the most right now, because you can't be a
True. Or you can do like circle time, if you've got a big family.
Exactly. Family meetings. We do that. We're like, family meetings. It's your turn to talk. Like, what do you want to talk about? So
my son always likes to talk at the end of the night when it's time to lay down and go to sleep. All of a sudden.
Oh my, yes. We have the same issue. And I talk to other parents with kids similar ages. They have the same issue. The kids want to open up and get loose right before bed.
I have to say, part of what I think it is too, because I'm always like, why analyzing? Why is this happening? I think part of it is their minds are always going, or they're being stimulated throughout the day by their devices and other things. And then they find like they're having thoughts of their own or questions and curiosities when they get off that.
Absolutely. Yeah. They need time to think themselves, right? To just contemplate things, think about, other things. Yeah.
And so we'll ask questions. And that was one of my themes this week, was sort of like honesty is the best policy, because Scorpio is, they want truth. You know what I mean? There's
they want
a lot of big questions right now for kids. And when am I going to go back to school? And what's happening? And why can't I do this? Why can't we go there? And trying to find those compassionate yet really honest answers.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think they're smart.
Right. Kids are smart. They're intuitive. They pick up more than we think. And I think, honestly, most of the time, I think kids handle the truth better as long as it's compassionate. Even if it's not what they want to hear, they handle it better than uncertainty. They have a really hard time dealing with uncertainty. They need to know what comes next. And if you don't know what comes next, like right now, you can be honest with them, but the honesty is better than the uncertainty. Honesty from the parents is better than just, you know, not having an answer, especially for a sign like Scorp. They like to get to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
They need to know the ugly truth. You know, I asked my son one time, I said, is it better to feel bad or feel nothing? And he said, I'd rather feel bad. He said, what's the point of feeling nothing? That's what he said. That's how Scorpio people are. They would rather feel bad, at least have the feeling, than feel nothing. They need to feel the entire range of human emotions.
I have questions here. Let me look.
Right, all right, great.
Let's see. Anna says, how would a Scorpio in 8th house look for this Mercury retrograde in a toddler? If you want to stop screen share, then we can just chat and sort of.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how would Scorpio in the 8th look for this? So basically, Mercury retrograde in the 8th house for a toddler.
Right. Yeah,
So what do you think? That's pretty. I mean, it sort of speaks to what we were talking to. I'd say a lot of possible emotions coming up.
Probably going to be fussier. Probably going to be fussier than normal. Probably going to have trouble sleeping more so than usual. This child is obviously not old enough to like really touch on a lot of the 8th house themes that would come, you know, later in life. So, but definitely, this is a child that will probably be feeling very intensely during this time. So, like you said, fussier, more trouble sleeping than usual. If they're, I don't know how old this child is, but like assuming they can, you know, verbally articulate, may have more trouble than usual. I know all toddlers have trouble articulating. That's where a lot of the frustration has come from. Probably will be feeling a lot more frustrated than usual. So just, you know, do all the usual, you know, self-care stuff. This child is probably going to need more affection, depending on the other placements in the chart. Will probably need more affection than usual during this time. That's what I would think.
Okay, yeah. It says, how would this Mercury retrograde look for a toddler with Scorpio in the 8th? His Mercury is in Virgo.
Yeah.
Okay, so his Mercury's in Virgo, and then retrograde will be transiting his 8th.
Got you. Okay.
Okay. And then Susan King says, how does Mercury retrograde affect things if it transits your natal Mercury? My son has Mercury in Scorpio in the 2nd house. So if it affects, Mercury retrograde affects things if it transits your natal.
Yeah. So this is the sun has Mercury in Scorpio, and it's going to be hitting his natal Mercury. Is that right?
That's what it says. My
okay.
son
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. This is, yeah, that's going to be pretty heavy. So all the themes we talked about are going to probably play out more intensely. So how old is your son? Do we know?
Susan, do we know how old your son is? Want to share that?
That'd be helpful to know.
Is it kind of like a Mercury return kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, they would. So it'd be retrograding, hitting the natal Mercury retrograde, and then hitting the natal Mercury again going forward. So usually when that happens, you know, with the retrograde, when it hits the retrograde, he's 9. Okay, the retrograde hits the planet, then you're gonna be contemplating a lot of things. And like you said earlier, not the time to make any decisions yet, but then when Mercury hits the natal Mercury again going direct is the time to take action. So in terms of a 9-year-old, I mean, I don't know, this can cause, like, transiting the 8th house can cause some confusion in general about kind of life and what's happening right now, and difficulty communicating. Like all those things would be felt more intensely, I would think.
Yeah, and also he has the Mercury in the 2nd.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
So the 2nd house is, you know, fixed. That's Taurus. So he may be having things come up where he really needs to talk about some things or figure out some things, or is unclear about some things about how he feels about maybe himself,
right?
Or feeling more clingy, maybe even. Like I think that having that retrograde hit the natal, maybe a lot of sort of questions come up.
Right.
And it's not, no one's able to really find answers yet. So
Could be
sort
hard,
of talking, assessing, being together, kind of, you know, what do you feel? Asking those questions, digging into what he might be feeling. If he's wanting to talk or wanting to talk. I mean, a 9-year-old, if you get him in the right, you know, thing, my son, maybe like night before you go to bed, start chatting.
Right. Exactly. Is there anything you want to talk about? Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about?
Emphasizing direct is when you can maybe start, you know, we were talking about that a few weeks ago. What do you say we try this? Or maybe we start to make some decisions about how to move through to make him feel more secure about that issue.
Right. And there may be a lot of kind of ruminating and overthinking going on with him because transiting the second house associated with Taurus, which is a fixed sign, in Scorpio, also a fixed water sign. We have a lot of ruminating going on. That happens with my son, who is a sun in Mercury and Scorpio, that there's a lot of kind of ruminating and overthinking going on. And you can just impress upon him that these feelings are normal, that this whole process is normal, that, you know, I'm here whenever you want to talk. That's the essential thing, is you make sure that you are available when the child needs to talk to you, right? That you're open and receptive to when they want to talk to you. And they'll probably be going through a lot of stuff that they don't fully.
Letting them know too that how they're feeling is okay, is fine and understandable. And I always tell my son, yeah, I'm feeling this way too. Like we're all, it's okay. You know, or like I was saying earlier about it, creating this sort of fogginess or, you know, we just don't know. It's okay to not know. We don't have to know now. And about acceptance, accepting how you feel in a moment, accepting, you know, helping them accept themselves in that moment and knowing it's okay.
Right, because like we said earlier, kids like to know what's coming next. And this period, especially with Susan's son's placements, Mercury is all about knowing, and he doesn't know. And he may, you know, exhibit some frustration and confusion about not knowing. And that's okay, that this energy will pass. All the transits eventually pass. And, you know, it'll get direct again and things will be less confusing and less uncertain, right? Even if we don't know everything yet. Right?
Yeah, and we can't even think about Mercury retrograde in isolation. We're kind of talking about it a little bit in isolation.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just so much more going on. And we know that Mars is retrograde in Aries. We know that it's squaring off that Capricorn, Pluto. Like there's a lot of other intense energies coming, you know, present that are adding to this intensity.
Right.
So we're talking about this one particular aspect, but it's really heavy. And that's the biggest thing I keep reminding myself of when there's those moments is I've been trying to talk less, say less, and be present more because I just know that the anxiety and the tension and the frustrations that are just happening in general right now are compiling.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yes, absolutely.
Retrograde.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a Gemini. I like to talk, and I find myself about to say something, and then I have to check myself because I always have the impulse to talk. Yeah. And I have an 8th house Mercury like you, and I tend to be very sarcastic, and I have to check myself because sometimes the sarcasm is misunderstood, and sometimes people can be in a very sensitive, just feel very sensitive that day, and they're not in the mood for it to hear sarcasm. So you have to think about all that. Yeah, and always, when in doubt, you can always say something later. But once you say something, really hard to take it back. I've said stuff in the past where I was like, man, I should not have said that. I feel terrible. So sometimes just go to another room. We have a nice backyard here, and I'll just go out on the deck and just read and be like, I need some fresh air and a few moments of quiet. So.
Never underestimate the power of a good, honest apology.
Yes.
You know, I mean, like, I say I'm sorry. Kids are very forgiving.
Yeah. They are.
So, I mean, I don't know how many times. I mean, my Pisces boy always says he's sorry. And sometimes he says he's sorry too much, right? I'm like, it's okay. But I really think it's important to be okay as a parent to say, look, man, I'm sorry. I overreacted. And you know, I'm sorry. It's a tough day. Let's just take a break. Let's just go outside. Let's, you know. Right. So having that compassion for yourself and not being afraid to show that for your child or be an example of that for your child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, it starts with that, right?
Absolutely. It does not make you a weak parent if you're apologizing. It's the opposite. It makes you a good parent. Your kid Your kid sees that you are not perfect, and you are not perfect, right? And you don't know everything. So it's as long as you're making an effort to improve, obviously your kid will understand that. Children naturally want to be close to the parents. They naturally want that, right? They feel hurt when there's a problem with the connection. They feel hurt, and that hurt sometimes comes out as defiance of other things, especially in older kids. So remember that. Always prioritize the relationship. And like I've read, I didn't make this phrase up, so I can't take credit for it. Connection before correction. Make sure you're connecting first before you address any issues with behavior or whatever else, right? Especially for older kids, especially, right, who have starting to have more independence. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I was thinking about this the other day, talking to a friend about it. Like, conscious parenting really begins with us,
Right.
Begins and ends with what we know of ourselves and who we are. And we set the example, like you said, and, we might be a hot mess trying to figure this whole thing out, and that's okay. We're honest, right, and we're doing our best, and we have good intentions. You got to know you're a good parent if you're trying. You're trying to learn, you're trying to do better.
Right.
So this is great. I mean, I think this is a great talk. I love that you were present with me to sort of rip the Band-Aid off.
Absolutely. It's just so exciting. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, going live and talking about Mercury and these intense times. And hopefully we can do more like this. Let me check and just make sure there's no more questions up here. I think
anybody else have any last call for questions?
Yeah, you can do that with #replay. If you watch it later, throw in your questions for me and Maria, and we can always dive back in, keep the conversation going. And if you have ideas for other things to chat about, other topics or things like that, shout them out in the group, because I'd love to do more of this and have more of a personal contact with members of the group, support and promote other great astrologers like yourself, and, keep the support going.
Absolutely.
Do you have any closing thoughts, Maria?
No, that's pretty much it. Just hang in there. We're going to be, as this Mercury retrograde ends, we're still going to be in Scorpio season. So expect to see kind of those same themes be continued for a bit. And then just, enjoy the time with your kids. That's kind of like one of the main messages, right? Is just enjoy the time with your kids and focus on that, focus on the relationship. And when you have a good relationship where the kids feel comfortable talking to the parents, everything else stems from that. They will do fine as long as, you're working on the relationship. And that's hard to do because a lot of us are trying to do everything at once, run the household, work, everything else. That's hard to do. We're not robots. So give yourself a break once in a while. I took a break last night and watched a scary movie. It was awesome. I freaked myself out. So stuff like that, So
keep it light, even though it's really heavy.
Yeah. It's heavy energy. Yeah. It's heavy energy. Scorpio is also very heavy.
Yeah, it's a great time to deepen our connections with our kids and with each other, but also we got to have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's spooky, scary month, right? October. Absolutely. So have a little fun.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. It's awesome. I'm going to say goodbye to the group, and we'll stop.
Bye, guys. All right. I'll see you guys in the group. All right. Take care.
Bye. Bye. I'm going to end.